and welcome back to the It's Not Supposed to Be Pretty podcast. My name is Kyle Stapleton, and I am your host. So before we get into it, I want to talk about fire. Now, fire can be very destructive. I mean, remember last year, the wildfires in California, the fires in Hawaii, homes destroyed, people lost their lives. Every year, thousands of miles of forest are taken out. Animals lose their lives. However, fire can also be used for something else. It can be used to forge, it can be used to refine, it can be used to sharpen, and it can ultimately be the thing that we need to walk through in order to rebuild our lives. So I was thinking about this concept probably around episode 2, because I'll be honest, I don't even like hearing myself talk that much, and I certainly didn't want to do a whole 100 episodes of you guys having to just listen to me drone on and on and on and on. So I knew pretty early on I wanted to start bringing on guests, and so this series is called Through the Fire, where I bring on guests who have been through their own fire, whether it's been alcoholism or drug addiction, whether it's been mental health struggles, whether it's been legal problems or family issues. And the purpose is to talk about what it was like going through that fire, and what their life is like now. And my first guest is somebody I've known for 2 years. He's actually been the first person that's asked for my help, who actually has stuck through it. He is part of the exception, not the rule. Anybody in the recovery community knows that a lot of times somebody asks for your help, and for a little bit they're on fire with it, and then they stop making meetings, they stop calling, and before you know it, they're gone. You never hear from them again. So this fellow's name is Chris. Chris, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm good, Kyle. Thanks for having me on. My name's Chris, and I'm an alcoholic. Um, you want me to share a little bit about my story, myself, and talk about my story?
Yeah, why don't you share a little bit about what walking through that fire was like for you?
Sure. So, I grew up in Newtown, Pennsylvania, and my family is great. And I was just I was filled with some fear as a kid in like elementary school and middle school, and um I don't know, like ice hockey was something that I
So what were you
played at,
so
played in.
so that word that you just
Mhm.
used, that four-letter dirty word called fear. So you've been around for a little bit. You've done some digging. What do you think you were afraid of?
Yeah, I have no clue. You know, Probably a little bit of fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, things of that nature. And I don't know, it slowly started to consume my life. And like I said, I played ice hockey. That got me out of myself from this fear that I was feeling. Um and I guess I got the first time I got drunk. I just remember feeling like, wow, like, okay, this will work for sure. And me getting drunk with my friends the first time, that was like my first spiritual experience for sure. Um,
Why don't you describe that for us? What was it like that first time for you? Like mentally, physically?
sure, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was a knot in my stomach or what, but I just remember, like kind of like melting to the floor. You know what I mean? A little bit of, that, for people that they're alcoholics or addicts, you kind of have that feeling of like, wow, okay, like this is what been missing. Like, this is gonna fix me, type of a thing, you know. Um, so yeah, that was kind of like my first experience, um, I learned how to control at least what I thought was control, um, you know, in high school, um, with my drinking and like those serious consequences for the most part, you know, and but I remember going to college and um, and just being like, you know what, I should probably do something other than just go to classes, um, you know, party, hang out with my friends, and um, so I ended up joining the ice hockey team, um, at Westchester University, and you know that was great. That was kind of what I needed to have some structure, you know. Um, but you know, slowly but surely, like what I thought was control, um, you know, was starting to kind of, you know, become these blurred lines of like just taking it a little bit too far. You know, being the guy that was up a little bit later than everybody else, kind of wanted to keep the party going, and when I was in college, I ended up go to a doctor and getting uh, prescribed medication. You know, I do have ADHD, and you know now I take something that's not a narcotic, and you know I see a psychiatrist, and you know he helps me out with some herbal supplements and things of that nature.
And
So
that's really interesting that you point out the ADHD, because I think with the ADHD brains, I'm pretty sure I also have one. That the brain, the way it functions, I swear it needs constant different forms of stimulation.
mhm,
Because if it doesn't have that, it something just something just is different
mhm,
about how the brain operates of somebody with ADHD. I know that for myself personally, like I need to I needed to always have some type of form of mental stimulation to keep me present.
mhm,
If I didn't have it, I was going to go off in a million different
mhm,
directions.
mhm.
So by this point, when you're in college, do you still feel like you have some semblance of control? Are you drinking every day by this point? Are you going to class drunk? Are you going to
Yeah,
practice
yeah.
drunk? Or are there periods where you're like, oh, I have to go to class or I have practice, and so I'll like
Sure.
drink on Thursday, and you actually like wait till Thursday, to drink,
Mhm.
or are you pretty much just doing it whenever at this point?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part though, I really did not go to class drunk. I didn't go to ice hockey practice drunk or anything like that. It was kind of like, you know, just turning that thirsty Thursday into Friday Saturday, you know, maybe you know what I mean, like maybe Sunday. Like um it was still not like getting me into trouble or anything like that. And I think that there was a point over my senior year where it started to like you know, looking back on it through a silver lens. um I would say that somewhere in my senior year, uh I think like the like, oh crap, like I'm gonna graduate type of a thing, like real life is right around the corner. um you know, kind of like what we talked about earlier, that fear, you know, or that performance anxiety was really starting to set in, you know.
So were the substances still helping with reducing that fear, or had that stopped working by this point?
No, it was still working then. You know what I mean? But there's one thing that I'll never forget is, um, I guess this was my junior year, and the ice hockey team did a simple, um, like scavenger hunt, right? And you know there was something that we did back at the ice hockey house that was completely innocent for the most part, right? And I think there were like a couple of cups you had to drink to go up the steps, and it was like a race, like it was competitive, it was fun, and like my teammates like tapped out after like getting to like step this like go up the steps of drinking these cups of liquor, and I just remember finishing the last couple at the top of the steps because they tapped out, and like it sucked. Like I wasn't really thrilled that I had to drink it, but at the same time, though, I was also like, yeah, well, it really wasn't completely out of the ordinary for somebody like me, to just gulp those down, and some of the guys in the hockey house that were older than me kind of looked at me like, oh boy, Schultze might be a little bit of a wildcat. You know what I mean? So,
I,
um,
I remember, as I was in a fraternity when I was in college, and I think it was, well, I won't say it was my junior year. It was my third year in attendance, but I think I may have only accumulated the credits of a sophomore. Um, Going to class was not a thing that I did. I remember we had a party with a sorority. I think it was red light, green light. Like it was basically if you wore the color. Like yeah, if you were single, you wore a green shirt. If you were red, or if you wore a red shirt, you were in a relationship. If it was complicated, you wore a yellow shirt. And we had gotten a keg, and we were doing keg stands. And I remember by that point I had gotten pretty good at keg stands, and we were timing each other.
mhm,
That's what you do when you're in college, and
mhm,
you you time each other on keg stands. And I remember for a little while I had the record for the longest keg stand in the
mhm,
house, and
mhm,
I'm just
mhm, mhm.
of all the things that I would want to have as a record in my life, for whatever reason, I was super proud of that for
Mhm.
a long time. And now I just look back and I'm like, oh no, my priorities
Right,
were all out of whack. I was totally insane. I had no idea what was going on.
right, right. So, yeah, I mean, listen, college is fun, right? Like we're all going to experiment. Um, I'm sure my daughter, when she goes to college, she's going to do the same thing, and you know, just there's little things that you look back on, you're like, okay, like here was a sign, and here was a sign, but um, you know, so when I graduated college, it's incredible how life can take you um, down a path that that you are just completely oblivious to, that like this is not the right path here. So I I was uh, gonna join this family business, um, and that my dad was the owner of, and I'm like, all right, I'm done college, I'm ready, and he was like, hi, geez, I don't have a spot for you in the office right now. Like, could you give me some time? Like, could you just go work for, work for this, construction company? It's, family friend, and, I had worked there over high school and college. And I was like, sure, you know what? Like, no problem. Like, gave me a little bit more construction background. Um, and, for the most part, I was like, sure, you know what, why not? And I don't really know where within this like small period of time, everything went wrong, but I just remember like, starting to be like hanging out with people that I just shouldn't have been hanging out with. And,
So what were these people like? I'm interested.
oh, they, for the most part,
Like, did they like?
they were good. They were, honestly, they were good people. Like, they weren't, you know, I think that they were probably in a very similar place that I was in. You
So
know what
you
I mean?
always. So it seems. So you had structure. That's what I'm picking up in your story. You played out. You had the structure of sports growing up. You went to college. you graduated, you got a job. So did it ever start to cross your mind at this stage of your life of, hey, maybe I don't drink like other people? Because
Mm.
I know for me, that was one of the disqualifiers from that I had for myself. It was like, well, I've always had a job. I didn't necessarily graduate from college the first time, but I got back in college, and I was at that point I was making dean's list every semester, and it was kind of never crossed my mind that
Mm.
I don't drink like other people drink. I'm
Mm.
just whatever, like I drink.
Mm.
It is what it is. I get high. But look at all this stuff I can do. So
Mm.
I'm just curious if it ever if at this point it had started to cross your mind that, hey, maybe I don't drink like other people drink.
Yeah, there was so the the owner of this construction company would uh you know uh, right where we just he like knew me when I was younger, and I remember being down at my at our family shore house down the Jersey Shore, and we were doing a job um uh at my mom and dad's um house, and we were replacing these like brackets. It was a big job. Like you had to jack the house up just a little bit and put like galvanized um, hangers in and all that stuff. And simple job, and it was kind of fun because we got to go down there. Like our whole crew went, like the five of us, and um, I think we like went down on like a Wednesday, and then like we drank a little bit on Thursday, and the one guy that was like the right hand man of the owner of this construction company, like he only had like a couple of beers when we were like having pizza, and I think I drank a 6 pack. And I remember waking up the next day and kind of feeling a little hungover, and I had friends coming down. We were going to go to the Ocean Drive, and really like that was something that looking back on it, like those Thursday or Friday nights of just not being able to like wait until the party started on Saturday. Like I was like kind of getting it in
Like you, yeah,
before,
you
and
were
that's probably the biggest thing looking back on it. It's like you're almost like pre-gaming,
like
right?
the mindset of, why am I going to wait for the party when I can just party right now?
Yes, 100%. And like actually that weekend is the same weekend that I had my friends come down, and I was introduced to what the heck was it? It was Oxycontin. So
Mm.
I remember kind of doing that and being like, wow, this like gave me the same feeling that alcohol gave me, but I'm not, you know, drinking as much. And I remember waking up the next like that Sunday and feeling like kind of like okay,
Not as
not as hungover
not
or
the
whatever,
not as hungover as if from alcohol. Yeah,
So, um, and again, right, like uh that was just like I thought a phase, and then sooner or later I remember hanging out with this friend of mine that could get them, and I was like, wow, like maybe this is like something I can do forever, like and not have to drink as much. So like again, that all kind of goes back to the alcohol, and it kind of like just spiraled from there. Then I think my dad was starting to notice like, damn, I think Chris is getting a little bit more out of control than I remember my like son getting. You know what I mean? And at that point, I think I don't think I was addicted to him, and then I was starting to hang out with this other friend that could get some dry goods that were very similar, and he lived where did he live? He lived in Philly, and I remember going down to like some places in Philadelphia that you know were a little bit over my head as far as my like a street cred level. You know what I mean?
hmm
And
oh yeah,
so I remember kind of being like, oh my god, dude, like I can't believe I'm going down here to pick this stuff up. But I was just, yeah, at that point, it really had me, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
you know.
you would think like back working for Pepsi, what year is it? 2026. We're going back to 2011 and 2012. My route was down in Kensington.
Mm,
You would think that after seeing what's down there and how people end up, that
mm-hmm,
you know I might be like, oh,
mm-hmm,
maybe I shouldn't use drugs.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, that never stuck.
Sure.
I got into
Yeah.
oxys too, man. Oxys were dangerously good.
Mm-hmm.
I liked them a little bit too much,
Yeah.
and it got too good too quick.
Yeah. And honestly, though, I'm kind of grateful for it because it probably got at least
Yeah,
got me to
I
my
think
bottom a little bit
oxys
faster.
were the
So.
first. I think oxys were the first time for me where had that internal like, holy fucking shit.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be careful with these. That and cocaine. Those were the only two that ever had any semblance of an alarm brain or
Mm-hmm.
an alarm brain.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry guys, I had my son all weekend. uh, those cocaine and oxycontin were the only
Mm-hmm.
two substances that I ever used where an alarm bell went off where it was like, you need to really be careful with these guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I can identify with that. So yeah, that was I don't know, man. Like it was a very short period. Like you said, they were strong enough where like, some consequences started to happen and you know, nothing with with police or anything like that. It was just like my family, my friends were starting to realize like, like whoa, we gotta slow this down. You
So,
know.
so did your friends party the way that, like, the same way that you did, or were they? How can I say this?
Mm,
Did they party like you partied, or did it appear that they had a better handle
they
of
probably
like
had a better grip
they
on it.
could do it Friday and Saturday night, or Saturday night and Sunday night, and then like Monday morning? All right, I got to work. It's done. I'll pick it up next weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we all like, like you said, dude, they're strong, and I think we all kind of like went back and forth and like, holy moly, like we should probably just stick to like smoking a joint or having beer, But they're strong, they're addictive, right? So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Um, I really I don't know. All I know is that for me, I'm really being honest with myself. Like I just decided to take it to a different level, and you know, um, like I said, that was a smaller period of time, like in my early 20s, and I finally like put all that behind me, um, and my parents like took me to like a local psychiatrist, and you know kind of was kind of like a mini intervention, if I'm really being honest, right? Like they were kind of like, listen, like this is what Chris is dealing with here, and we that was helpful because we worked on some
Now, were you
boundaries and stuff
honest?
like that.
Were you honest with the psychiatrist? Because
Yeah,
I know you
I
told
told
him the truth.
I oh I, yeah, yeah,
All right,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're
Which
better.
is honestly like it's they probably caught me at a good point where
Oh, that
I was
you
being
were back. You
honest.
were in that like spot where you were kind of like scared enough
Yeah.
to tell the truth a little bit.
Right, because I was like, okay, you got a
Yeah,
point here. I probably shouldn't be doing these types of things
yeah.
if I'm gonna go and try to, uh, work at this my dad's family business, like start a
Oh my
career,
god!
right?
I wish I would have been scared enough in my mid 20s to
Yeah,
actually tell the truth.
right.
I bullshitted myself so badly. All I could do was bullshit them.
Sure. They caught me at a good moment.
Yeah.
That was probably God looking out for me. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean that again. Um, put that behind me, and then my dad and I had a conversation, and he's like, "All right, I finally got a spot for you. Let's get this let's get this started, um, and I kept it together, and started to develop a name for myself, and the family business and this industry that I'm in, and um, but I mean, the one thing I can say is that because I struggle to control my drinking on the weekends still, um, after this all happened, it was almost like, I could tell that my brain was trying to recreate the same,
Were you
you
blacking out
know,
every time you drank? And where was it? Were you mixed?
uh, not like, not really, but
Not really.
at this point, I'm starting to, you know, use the ADHD medication.
That was the
Um,
what was that?
that was Adderall.
Adderall.
That was Adderall, right? So I was starting to use that to you know, kind of glide off of some of the places that I would be at, like just, with how much I drank. And I remember, one of the, girls that I had dated before I met my wife, she told me like, you drink like a fish. You know what I mean? So, um, yeah, I mean, whatever. So I've had a high tolerance, but eventually that will backfire on you. You know what I mean? And
I remember there was a poor, there was a poor woman that I'm so oh man, I'm so sorry if you're listening right now. She had the misfortune of dating me in my early 20s, and she said she's like, you're a really heavy drinker.
go figure,
And I was like,
right?
I was like,
Excuse me.
what did I say? I said quitters never win.
Mm,
Yeah,
right, right,
yeah, that was the mindset.
right. Yeah. And so yeah, I don't know, man. Like I got lucky with that, I guess, and yeah, so I built a career, but I had my priorities totally backwards at this point. You know what I mean? Like,
Now, were you
I'm just
working?
working. I'm working.
Were you still doing the construction gig, or were you working with your dad now?
So I think about when I was 24 is when I joined the family business.
All right.
Um, and honestly, there was an office manager that was tough, and that was probably good for me. Um, but eventually, I think he got like towards the end of. I'll get to all that, but so I'm building this career, right? Um, and things are going well, at least I thought they were, right? I'm still drinking very heavily on the weekends, but some of the sales stuff that I was doing, I wore a lot of hats, being the boss's son, and I was
Probably didn't help with that fear either.
probably not, probably not, but I mean, you kind of told me, um, well, anyway, so there's something on that you told me that was helpful, but I'll get back to that. So, um, yeah, I mean, like, so I'm doing the sales thing, but it's also like allowing me to like still drink when I go to these events and taking people to games and all this stuff. And you know I can't remember when, but there were a couple of like instances where now I'm like, crap, dude, I think that like you know at this point I'm not really drinking a ton of beer. I'm kind of switching to like Captain Morgan or Tito's, and like beer is slowly but surely kind of not working for me either, right?
Mm-hmm. The liquor is quicker.
Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, so this is probably like a period of like 24 to 31 that
Okay.
I'm like just, only by the grace of God, I'm not getting the DUI. I'm not, getting in trouble with the police, and I'm holding the job, and then, I meet my wife probably, I guess when I was 28, I think, and she's completely normal. Her family's Her family's awesome, and it was good for me. Like I remember my mom telling, kind of saying one time in the kitchen, like, talking to her friends, like, yeah, Nicole's really good for Chris. You know what I mean? And uh, that's not why we got married or anything like that, but it was a great relation. It's still a great relationship. Love her to death, and you know, she's my best friend, right? And we eventually get married, but like that was helpful, right? And like, you know what, a lot of guys in their late 20s, they were getting married, or I'm sure I'm not the first person to be like, first guy where your fiance or your girlfriend's kind of like, you're getting ready to get married, and they're like, hey, we gotta like back this down a little bit. And
Now,
yeah,
did you ever get like um, blackout drunk or out of control on the Adderall around her when you were dating before you got married, or
yeah, yeah,
were
yeah,
you
yeah,
able to
yeah.
turn it off?
No, at that
No,
at that point, it was really becoming hard to hide, right? Like when you're, you're really kind of given,
it was probably easier.
you're giving your significant other the backseat passes to really kind of see what's going on behind the scenes, right? So
Well, I imagine it may have been a little bit easier when you weren't living together yet,
sure, sure, um,
until it got to the point to where you just couldn't hide it anymore.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I guess 28, and then we moved in together. Um, I don't know, maybe when I was 30, I guess, and yeah, it was becoming really hard because like I had been so used to like drinking the way that I wanted to drink on the weekends that it was getting hard to hide like how much I drank, and um you know and also at this point my dad and I, you know we weren't sure what to do like career wise. And I remember him telling me like at the dinner table once when I was younger, like, nothing would make me happier than to see you run this company, and that's what I did. I really gave it that, that shot of like, wow, like this is kind of cool that I have a shot to do this. And anyway, it got to a point where he was at in his life, that he kind of told my mom like, I can't do this anymore. And so he decided to sell to um, this larger, family uh, operator restaurant or company, and it was great. Like but same thing. Like I kept it together as long as I could. When he sold, the transition was going on, but I got to be honest, I fell to, excuse me, got a frog in my throat. I kind of fell to the finish line with it. Like I'm getting married. Um, I'm like now in this different role. And I just fell to the finish line. And um, I remember going to my mom, who's been sober for like 9 years at this point. And I remember telling her after spending a week like at my in-laws shore house, and I told myself I wasn't going to drink when I went down there. And I couldn't. I ended up drinking, like kind of like I think kind of close to every day. And my wife and at this point, like I think my true self was kind of screaming, from my heart, like, dude, like this is like really got to stop. And I just couldn't. I kept like a handle of vodka in a backpack, and I like brought it everywhere I went, and like I honestly didn't really know what was going on. you know and like if you're an alcoholic, though, you're kind of the last to know most of the time. Anyway, so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Uh-huh.
so I remember going to my mom, and like we got done with being down, on that vacation. I told myself I was going to drink at, and I went to her and I was like crying to her. I said, "Mom, I think I'm an alcoholic. I can't I can't stop." And we like had such a great moment, as with a mother and son, moment there. And I think this was during COVID. So I did my first like AA meeting um, on a Zoom, and I said I was an alcoholic, and then um, I just I was like, all right, that was as much as I had in me. And I thought that like if I admitted that I would be able to stop, you know. And I didn't know that you had to keep coming back to meetings, and I didn't know that you had to get a sponsor. I didn't know any of that. So, um, and I guess like maybe a month later, dude, I got into a car accident where thank God I didn't hurt anybody else or myself. It was pretty bad. I totaled the car, and I the gig was up at that point. My employer knew about it. I denied the blood alcohol test because I still wasn't ready to surrender. And it was a bad car accident, man. Like it was really scary. And uh yeah, so I'm still after the car accident. I'll never forget though. At my home group, um, these guys would pick me up when I didn't have my license, and they would take me to the an in person meeting, and then you know, then it was even more scary. But I'm so glad that they planted those seeds because I was just so addicted to alcohol at that point. I could not stop for like a year after, um, and I stopped like in August of 22, and I just couldn't believe it. Like I could not believe that it took me that long to stop. Um, and I finally went to, um, I think it was the same group, and I stopped drinking though. So I haven't had this is not my sobriety date, but I did not. I haven't had a drink since August of 22, and um,
I remember when you first started coming to meetings after you asked me to be your sponsor. And I remember you would always open up with, my name's Chris, I'm an alcoholic. I haven't had a drink since August of 22.
but then all this other stuff happened.
But then all this other stuff happened, and I felt like I felt so bad, but I knew I had to pull you aside. I had to be like,
Yep.
I know you haven't had a drink since August of 22, but don't forget,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you did relapse and you burnt your life to the ground.
sure,
So
sure.
maybe we don't lead with that anymore.
Right. But for anyone that's listening though, you know, I caught a little bit of the AA magic in the bottle. You know what I mean? Like I got to step 3. I had a sponsor. I was going to meetings. You know, some coworkers and my wife and family were starting to see some change. But I remember I got to the 4th step, and I think I just freaked out because I had to take my inventory, and I just
You weren't convinced. You weren't convinced you were an alcoholic.
I think I just got scared of like, oh my God, I have to do all this, and I had to look at myself, right? Um,
Yeah, nobody. Well, I can't say nobody. I'm sure. I mean, let me rephrase. I can't say nobody doesn't like to look at themselves. But
mm,
I know that my first time in AA, from my own experience, I wasn't fully convinced I was an alcoholic.
mhm.
I did the 4th step, but I didn't do it honestly. Then when I came back, I was desperate enough to where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I'm going to just gonna full throttle. We're gonna do this. We're gonna take a look at everything we need to take a look at, and I'm really happy that I did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, it's not an easy. It's not easy. That's why. I mean,
It's not always pretty, right?
there's people. It is not. It's not always pretty, especially the 4-step. If you do the 4-step the correct way, to anybody who's listening, well, for my people that aren't in the recovery community, you probably have no fucking clue what a 4-step is. So it's basically it's an inventory of yourself. You're turning the spotlight inward and you're looking at yourself, right? We have these 4 columns. Who we're resentful at, why we're resentful at them, what they did to us, and then we have this 4th column. And in this 4th column, we write down everything that we did in that relationship. So the first 3 are the best because we're talking about ourselves, we're talking about why we don't like you, and we're talking about what you did to us. And if you're an alcoholic, that's great because it's just your ego and your pride getting to take a walk. But then you got to do that 4th column, and then you're turning the spotlight on you, and then you got to sit there and be like, well, what did I do? And that's where if you do that inventory correctly, it's not pretty at all.
Sure. Right. So, but I'm still taking the Adderall. I'm still taking the Adderall, and
so that's right. You were in AA, but you were taking the Adderall.
Right. And you know what?
Yeah, for the ADHD.
Medications every 6 hours, right? I'm not a doctor, but if you're taking it responsibly, the way it's prescribed, doesn't mean you're not sober. But for me, I was still, like you said, not convinced. And I think I saw something like on Instagram about microdosing, and I ordered that, and that was like going to the house, which was like the worst thing.
Did I ever tell you that during the pandemic, when we were all watching TikTok, I started watching TikToks about microdosing, and I tried to ship mushrooms to myself so
they get you fucked up, especially if you're an alcoholic and drug addict like me, right? I was taking like 3 of them and at a time, and so I slowly started to relapse on that, and I'm starting to like do the California sober thing with some edibles, and it wasn't long before I was kind of like right back to being dependent on something, and I don't know, it didn't take very long for me to start to like go sideways again, and and what happened? So my wife and I are trying to have a kid, and she's having miscarriages, and we have to do we tried egg retrieval, we tried
and you had a lot going on at work at this point too.
Yeah, and like work's like, oh shit, like Chris is like
do
sober,
more.
Dude. Like holy moly, like good job, dude. Like
here's more responsibility.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And like, I freaked out at that too. I was like, no, I think they were like doing small things like, like planting seeds of like, hey, could you do this or could you do that? And like I did, and I did, a couple of those things. Like I did a fun little what was it? Like a fall event, where a couple of clients would come, and it was different than some of the stuff that I was used to when it was the family business. And I was like, all right, great, I did that. And I'm like, pat myself on the back, and little did I know what how good you have to be, or responsibility wise, to to work at a company like the one that I work at. It's like being on the Yankees, man. Like you gotta you gotta conform and do it the Yankee way. And I just wasn't capable of doing that yet. And I think they even said, like, what, could you just go drop off some pretzels to some, you know what I mean? They're like, like they were so patient with me, and I can honestly say I'm a grateful employee of theirs. And um but so my wife and I are going through all that, and then slowly trying to give me a little bit more responsibility at work. And yeah, dude, I imploded on myself like a dying star. You know what I mean? And all the stuff that I was taking at this point, and man, my wife and I finally get pregnant, so we bought eggs from an egg donor, and we got embryos made. And I think it was, yeah, November of 23. We finally get good news, like, yo, this is like a viable pregnancy. And what should have been one of the most like fruitful or best moments of my life, I was slowly slipping into this substance induced psychosis. And it was awful, man. Like, I thought that the car accident was traumatic, you know, and this was just worse. And it tells us that in the book, right? Like, this is a progressive disease. Things don't get better with time if you're still drinking or using drugs.
Over any considerable period,
Yeah,
it always gets worse.
sure,
Never better.
yeah. And so that was that was helpful for me, recovery wise. And so work's freaking out. They're like, dude, you gotta go out in FMLA. But I was, and my wife at this point, like, knew that there was something wrong, and I was really scaring her. So yeah, she had to leave, dude. And like, I was alone in my house for like a month and a half, and I was completely out of it. I thought the FBI was chasing me. I thought the CIA was after me. It was terrifying because it was real, like, I would slip into it and I would slip out of it. And so I don't know, like, same thing. Thank God that no one got hurt. Thank God I didn't get hurt. And and it all came to an end. The police have been called to called to my house because I'm making like noise. I'm literally like, I feel like my head is just hurting all the time. Um, just like playing music like really loud. It was so weird, man. And so the police are finally like, all right, we got to get Chris out of here. And they they tased me on my in-laws' front lawn because I was like trying to get my dog back. It was this cute, most adorable, like, neighborhood. I'm just like terrorizing. Yeah,
In where we live, we're from Pennsylvania. We live in a pretty nice part of PA, so to have something like that happen where we live is, oh man.
yeah. So they finally were like, okay, this kid's basically got to go to rehab. And they tased me on the front lawn. They were like, all right, enough of this. He's not listening to anything that we say. He's not like voluntarily that's at least, what I think that their thinking was. And so, but I'm still not okay. So I end up going to they don't know where to put me. So they send me to Friends Hospital, and I'm in like this psych ward. And thank God I went there. The staff there like helped me, I think, get out of the psychosis. I don't know what they gave me, but it gave me a time to like realize, like, whatever reality I was stuck in, like, it's not reality. And so shout out to them. They were very helpful. And so I finally am ready to leave this place, and the police came to pick me up, and they just wanted to make sure that like I didn't go home. So they took me to the station. They were like, "Hey, listen, I got bad news for you. You know, um, these are these are some of the charges that we have against you. And my lawyer that I had used for the DUI, great guy, was so helpful. Still talk to him. He said, okay, listen, this is what we got to do. You got to go to jail for a couple of days before we can get you to a treatment facility. The judge has already like agreed, like, and knows that this is like a mental health, alcohol and drug related thing going on here. So, but that was part of like what I had to do. So at that point, I was like, totally fine. That's totally fine. Because at this point, I'm starting to realize like that was all real, and I'm like not okay. So, um, but then at that point, they also said like, hey, you can't talk to your wife or your in-laws again. They're really freaked out by all this. And I'm sure I'm not the first person that's had problems with drugs and alcohol where they used a PFA to kind of like take some cool off time and stuff like that. So that's what my wife and my in-laws did, which was smart and kind of gave all of us some time to like step away from everything and heal, because it was crazy. It was wild. And so I go to jail for a couple of days. I'm in a smock, if anyone knows what that is. I was on like a suicide watch, and that's where I ended up. So don't ever want to go back there for sure. And so I leave there, and I go to Level Up Treatment Facility in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, and they were great too. Um, they really were. And when I was so when I was leaving there, um, let me back up. So I'm there for 2 weeks, and everyone in these rehabs, for the most part, is like, I don't need to go to PHP or IOP, and
I'm cured.
they just want to leave.
I'm cured.
So so I'm in rehab, and then everybody wants to leave, and I was just so beyond, um, you know, I was just done, and I was willing to do whatever my wife, who was still talking, or excuse me, I was going to do whatever my, mom was suggesting, and she was still talking to my wife, even though I couldn't, and she said like, we just whatever we have to do to fix this long term, you know, you have the time, you can take FMLA for like 2 or 3 months, and it'll all be good. We just gotta like, you know, um, get as well as we can. And I was like, sure, no problem. Sounds good to me. And Brandon Novak and John Fuscos from Redemption Treatment Center came, and were talking to me, and they 12-stepped the bejesus out of me, and were just like, dude, I promise, like PHP and IOP is a game changer. And and I believed him, and I'd watched a couple of like Brandon's like um, YouTube stuff before he came, and just seemed like a great guy. And I was like, hey, you know what? Sure. So, um, so I have this plan. In Level Up about like week 2 or 3, and what happened? And then what? Just one more thing I wanted to share. So before I left, uh, Level Up, like the last day that I was there, they literally picked me up that day and took me to the sober living house. Um, there was a guy that came in who was a speaker, and he said like, you wouldn't believe how many cases of psychosis I see personally and professionally from people in their earlier, or their earlier mid 30s that take Adderall that slip into a psychosis. And it kind of helped me understand like, okay, so that's what it was. You know what I mean? And so I leave Level Up, and I end up at Redemption, And they were just so great, man. The staff there was awesome, and um, I knew that AA had worked. I knew it worked, and that was truly something that I had in my back pocket. So I really took it seriously, and they said that they could start to see the change. Probably like the third week that I was there, and I finally, I finally go home, and ran into like some stuff that I still had to iron out when I got home. But the one thing I remember them telling me is you got to get a sponsor when you leave. And like I was like, well, I have this one in Delaware. Do I really, like, in my head, I'm like, do I really have to get one? Like, couldn't I just like go down to see him? And anyway, I just remember, you know, um, asking you to be my sponsor, and I'm so glad I did, Kyle, because um, you took me through the steps, and it transformed my life. It transformed my thinking. It transformed, me into this different person. And as you were taking me through the steps, like, I really, same thing. Like, I just remember getting to the fourth step and finally putting all the names down and truly being honest. And
You're
you
forced.
know,
Well, I want to back up a little bit because, like you came into my life, it was around March of 2024. I had lost my dad in November of 2023. Had started a new job, and
mhm,
really right from the get go of that, right out of the gate, just unaddressed grief, um, working long hours, lather, rinse, repeat, work, AA, being a dad. No, I had no sense of identity yet, no structure in my life. You came into my life, and you asked for my help, and you know, you've, I mean, we've been learning together. It's still 2 years, still two
mhm.
years into this thing. For you, we're still learning together. I mean, you've definitely caught me. You've definitely caught me on some bad days. You've definitely caught me in some bad periods of my life too.
It's
And
not
like,
always pretty, right?
and because you still ask for my help on a regular basis. You help me probably more than I help you, because you help me stay sober and accountable.
Hmm.
I wouldn't be a very good sponsor if I picked up a drink, or if I got high. So you help me more than I probably help you, because you help me stay sober. um, but I remember you were a lot like me in a lot of ways. um, when you first came in, you knew you had a problem. At least I'm pretty sure you were
Hmm.
convinced enough that you had a problem. You wanted to do something about it. But I remember in the first couple months that, I would reach out to you more so than you would reach out to me. And, we'd get on the phone and you would just start talking about a bunch of stuff. It seemed like you'd been sitting on it for a couple days. And I remember, like, I had to guide you a little bit. Like,
Hmm.
this is why we need to talk more regularly. And I remember we were at a big book study, and me and the other guys at the big book study, we'd been around for a little bit. Um, you were telling us about your legal troubles, and we were trying to tell you, like, just so you know, it might not go the way you want it to go, and that might not be a bad thing. And I remember you were terrified. Um, your eyes like got real big. You looked like a deer in the headlights. Like, you were not in a place where you could fathom that it might not go the way you want it to go, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Hmm.
And then I remember, I think it was right after that period, your daughter was born. You had the three, well, maybe it was maybe the PFA had expired at that point, but you had met at the courthouse. Your wife was there, her parents were there, and things went the way you wanted them to go. And then I remember I didn't hear from you for a couple days, and you called me. You were down at the shore,
Mm.
and it sounded like you thought you were,
Scared, maybe.
you know, gonna leave AA. And that was a whole conversation that we needed to have. But the important thing is you stayed sober, and you stayed in AA. You went through the steps. And what's your life like? What's your life like today? Like, what's your life been like since you have gone through the steps? Where do you see the most growth? And where do you think there's areas of your life where you're kind of being prodded to grow?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, just for anyone that's listening, it's so simple. You know what I mean? Like my mind likes to make things complicated, and um, I love, I can't believe I'm saying it, but I love going to AA meetings. Like that's my new family, and whenever I don't know the answer to something, or I'm off the beam and I go back to a meeting, like for the most part, like just about like every time you're going to hear something there that is going to be able to let you leave that meeting and hit bullseye with what you were trying to accomplish or trying to, get through. Because life's not always easy. And um, so if that, just for anyone that's listening, it's awesome. And sobriety's been, like just an absolute gift. And where I'm at today, I'm just like life really hasn't changed that much, right? Like I don't know. My perspective has really been what has changed the most. And, I'm learning to appreciate the small wins and have gratitude and pause. And, all that has now allowed me to be, um, like you said, a husband, a father, a son, a son-in-law.
You went from not having. I remember too, because I tried to kind of get you to slow down a little bit. Whether it was right or wrong, I was just doing.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to guide you like my sponsor would have guided me through that kind of stuff. And I remember you went from you had the PFA lifted, and Nicole and your daughter were coming over and spending more time at the house. And then I think by the end of the summer, you guys were already making arrangements to be back in the house. And, and then before I knew it, you guys were back in the house. And then I remember, because I had to point out to you, because you would call me, because just because you went through the 12 steps doesn't mean that life still doesn't happen, and doesn't mean that our wacky brain still can't give us wacky ideas that we need to talk to somebody about. And
get the crazy out, right? I mean,
and you would call me and you would be frustrated about things. You would, about relationships and in-laws and things like that. And I remember I had to point out to you on more than one occasion, hey, Chris, you remember a couple of months ago when you didn't have any of this stuff, and you were so, like, you had a death grip. Like, you were like, I will do anything to get this back. And
right.
And now you have it back, and you're complaining and you're complaining to me about it,
Sometimes it just takes a while for it to all sink in. And for me, like taking that ADHD medication for so long, and drinking the way that I was drinking, and it just takes a while for your mind to get where it needs to be to be a normal, productive member of society, right? That's why early recovery is so hard.
And I know, and also you're skimming over something really important, because there was a bunch of times where I would text you or call you to see what meeting you were going to, and you would say things like, "Oh, I want to spend time with my wife tonight. We haven't spent a lot of time together recently," or, "Oh, like my wife's um, had a really tough time with the baby, so I'm staying home tonight. I'm gonna cook dinner. I'm gonna watch the baby, give her a break." And that's what
Mm-hmm.
that's what husbands do.
For sure.
That's what fathers do. I mean, how many times have you called me on the phone and to have a conversation, and I hear your daughter in the background, like you're physically present with your child. That's what fathers do. That's what we're supposed to do as fathers. You do things that husbands are supposed to do. And I've heard you talk about work, and Dave's have given you a lot of responsibility. I remember like the first couple conversations we had when you were new in sobriety, about your worries and your fears at work, and now the things you talk about, it's the difference between night and day. You've definitely become a husband, a father, and an employee for sure.
Yeah. Don't quit though, right? I mean,
oh yeah, we don't. We're never cured. We're never cured. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's a one day at a time. It's a one day at a time lifestyle. We are never cured.
But there was a time though where, like, I needed however much medication to get through the day or the week, and all this fear about when am I going to refill the prescription, and like now that sanity's been restored, and I have, God of my understanding in my life, like I can go to Him, and it says in the book that, we had to seek this power, because that was our dilemma. We didn't have any power to live, and now I can go to that, and that's
for anybody
that's growth for me, for sure.
For anybody listening that's not in recovery and that has never been to an AA meeting or an NA meeting or any kind of meeting, we're a 12-step program, and Chris has mentioned this phrase, I should say, the book, several times. There's a book that we read that has the 12 steps in it. So he's just referencing the book. That's all. So when he says the book, that's what he's talking about. And where do you think the higher power? Oh, another thing, if you're not in recovery, we the 12 steps that I just talked about, they are a blueprint for living life on a spiritual basis. The steps are spiritual in nature. One of our steps asks us to come to believe in a power greater than ourselves. If you listen to episode 2, I talk a little bit about that, my own journey of that. But so Chris, where do you think the higher power is prodding you to grow now in your life?
I think he's just, like you talked about, slowing down and smelling the roses, enjoying the journey. That's that's what I think he's telling me to do right now, and to grow spiritually. You know what I mean? And I feel like at one point when you were taking me through the steps, we did we did Bible study on a regular basis, and
yeah, you remember the night I sent you the Christian rock song? I love when you tell that story.
Yeah, after my 5th step, or it was, I think so. I think I was on step 6 and 7, and you feel, you truly do, after you're done with your fifth step, you feel like you're starting to, um, you know, you're kind of building that arch that you're going to walk through as a free man. And, we talked about it, right? Like, I had this fear when I was like in, middle school. So like to be starting to be free of that fear a little bit, um, was just, I was like, I'm in. This is awesome. And yeah, 6 and 7 are kind of like the third step on steroids. And you just caught me at this point where I was like, just like in tears listening to Christian rock song. Like, I never thought that that would be something that I would be interested in. And, it just started to teach me how to live in the world of the spirit, you know. And like I said, I was I was in, I was totally 100% in on, I can do this. I can do this, Um, so yeah. And now I'm sponsoring somebody, and, he's on his fourth step, and he's doing a great job. And it's a beautiful life, man. You know, um, I really had to let go of the alcohol and the drugs to see how beautiful life really is. And, it takes a while to thaw out, from the way that we were living. And, you know, some people, I think just quit before everything starts to work. But once it starts to work, you know, I wouldn't even go back if I could, you know.
Yeah, that instant gratification that we all love. And that's the thing about any kind of work. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's recovery. I don't care if it's trying to find some kind of faith, if it's therapy. Like, it is not instant. If you want instant, if you're looking for instant gratification, then I'm going to recommend not taking that path, because it doesn't happen to the majority of people. It's a slow road, and yeah, like, it's easy to get frustrated with it. It's easy to go, what the fuck, man? Like, why do I keep tripping over these same stones? Why aren't I growing? Why is life not changing? This is bullshit. This is a waste of time. I tripped over so many of the same stones my first 3 years of recovery. It wasn't until March of 2025 where the pain finally became great enough. And that's the other thing I think too, is like, if it says it in another one of our books, that like, when this whole thing first started back in the 30s, the people that really needed it were low bottom cases, like where it was, if you don't do this, you're going to die. And it says it in that other book that I had mentioned, that most of us had to be pretty badly mangled by this disease before we were willing to accept help. And that is very true. That's very true. Pain is very useful. It really is. Like, we have a saying called pain is the touchstone of spiritual growth. I think pain is the touchstone of any type of growth, because I think finally when it becomes bad enough to where you're out of options, you can't rationalize it anymore. You can't run from it. There's no more hidey holes where you can tuck away. Like, it has to get to a point to where it's so bad where you finally are like, fuck it. I'm done. What do you got for me? Because I'm out of opinions. I'm out of ideas. I'm out of thoughts. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And I think that's true. Well, I know that's true. Again, from my own journey in recovery, after being sober for a couple of years, like, it's not just you put the drink down, you do the steps, and then everything is automatically good. You know, we're learning how to live after drinking for however many years we drank. My first drink was at 15. I got sober when I was 30. So, you know, that's 15 years.
Yeah. I think Carl Jung has a line that any man that doesn't face his own shadow by 35, you know, he he starts to like crystallize or get a little, almost like a little pickled. So yeah, life's good though, man. It really is. And yeah, hopefully you have me back on and talk about a little bit more growth, love your first couple episodes.
Well, thank you very much for your support. Yeah, we'll do like a group sit down. I think you, me, and our other friend, I'll do a whole episode on just on faith. You know, not anytime soon. Probably, you know, in a couple months or something.
Mm-hmm.
We'll sit down. We'll have a good conversation about faith and you know, passive faith versus the faith that we were taught to have. You know, I didn't tell you anything original. Everything that I've told you and walked you through is what my sponsor did with me. And, you know, we were very much taught the faith through moving your feet and taking action. Like it's not enough to just believe and hope things are going to get better. You got to get off your butt and move your feet, and you got to start doing things differently. But thank you for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, man.
All right. And that's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for all your support so far. 1,300 plus followers on TikTok, 5,800 plus followers on Instagram. We've got 57 plays on Spotify, 107 views on YouTube. Everybody who's clicked, everybody who's liked, everybody who's commented, everybody who's listened. Thank you so much. I couldn't do this without you. Stay tuned for episode 5. And remember, it's not supposed to be pretty. Good night.